Here is part 3 of Aesop's Fables. Number 28. The Stag in the Ox Stall. A stag chased from his lair by the hounds took refuge in a farmyard, and entering a stable where a number of oxen were stalled, thrust himself under a pile of hay in a vacant stall, where he lay concealed, all but the tips of his horns. Presently one of the oxen said to him, "What has induced you to come in here? Aren't you aware of the risk you are running by being captured by the herdsman?" To which he replied, "Pray let me stay for the present. When night comes I shall easily escape under cover of the dark." In the course of the afternoon, more than one of the farm hands came in to attend to the wants of the cattle, but not one of them noticed the presence of the stag, who accordingly began to congratulate himself on his escape, and to express his gratitude to the oxen. "We wish you well," said the one who had spoken before, "but you are not out of danger yet. If the master comes in, you will certainly be found out, for nothing ever escapes his keen eyes." Presently, sure enough, in he came, and made a great to-do about the way the oxen were kept. "The beasts are starving," he cried. "Here, give them more hay, and put plenty of litter under them." As he spoke, he seized an armful himself from the pile where the stag lay concealed, and at once detected him. Calling his men, he had him seized at once and killed for the table. Number 29. The Milkmaid and Her Pail. A farmer's daughter had been out to milk the cows, and was returning to the dairy carrying her pail of milk upon her head. As she walked along, she fell a-musing after this fashion: "The milk in this pail will provide me with cream, which I will make into butter and take to market to sell. With the money I will buy a number of eggs, and these, when hatched, will produce chickens, and by I shall have quite a large poultry yard. Then I shall sell some of my fowls, and with the money which they will bring in, I will buy myself a new gown, which I shall wear when I go to the fair. And all the young fellows will admire it and come and make love to me, but I shall toss my head and have nothing to say to them." Forgetting all about the pail, and suiting the action to the word, she tossed her head. Down went the pail, all the milk was spilled, and all her fine castles in the air vanished in a moment. The Dolphins, the Whales, and the Sprat. The Dolphins quarrelled with the whales, and before very long they began fighting with one another. The battle was very fierce, and had lasted some time without any sign of coming to an end, when a sprat thought that perhaps he could stop it. So he stepped in and tried to persuade them to give up fighting and make friends. But one of the dolphins said to him contemptuously, "We'd rather go on fighting till we are all killed than be reconciled by a sprat like you." Number 31. The Fox and the Monkey. A fox and a monkey were on the road together, and fell into a dispute as to which of the two was the better born. They kept it up for some time, till they came to a place where the road passed through a cemetery full of monuments, when the monkey stopped and looked about him and gave a great sigh. "Why do you sigh?" said the fox. The monkey pointed to the tombs and replied, "All the monuments that you see here were put up in honor of my forefathers, who in their day were eminent men." The fox was speechless for a moment, but quickly recovering, he said, "Oh, don't stop at any lie, sir. You're quite safe. I'm sure none of your ancestors will rise up and expose you." Number 32. The Ass and the Lapdog. There was once a man who had an ass and a lapdog. The ass was housed in the stable with plenty of oats and hay to eat, and was well off as an ass could be. The little dog was made a great pet of by his master, who fondled him and often let him lie in his lap. And if he went out to dinner, he would bring back a tidbit or two to give him when he ran to meet him on his return. The ass had, it is true, a good deal of work to do, carting or grinding the corn, or carrying the burdens of the farm, and ere long he became very jealous, contrasting his own life of labor with the ease and idleness of the lapdog. At last one day he broke his halter, and frisking into the house just as the master sat down to dinner, he pranced and capered about, mimicking the frolics of the little favorite, upsetting the table and smashing the crockery with his clumsy effort. Not content with that, he even tried to jump on his master's lap, as he had often seen the dog allowed to do. At that, the servants, seeing the danger their master was in, belabored the silly ass with stick and cudgels, and drove him back to his stable half dead with his beating. "Alas," he cried, "all this have I brought on myself. Why could I not be satisfied with my natural and honorable position, without wishing to imitate the ridiculous antics of that useless little lapdog?" Number 33. The Fir Tree and the Bramble. A fir tree was boasting to a bramble, and said somewhat contemptuously, You poor creature, you are of no use whatever. Now look at me, I am useful for all sorts of things, particularly when men build houses. They can't do without me then. But the bramble replied, Ah, that's all very well, but you wait till they come with axes and saws to cut you down, and then you'll wish you were a bramble and not a fir. Number 34. The Frog's Complaint Against the Sun. Once upon a time, the sun was about to take to himself a wife. The frogs in terror all raised their voices to the skies, and Jupiter, disturbed by the noise, asked them what they were croaking about. They replied, The sun is bad enough while even he is single, drying up our marshes with his heat as he does. But what will become of us if he marries and begets other sons? Number 35. The Dog, the Cock, and the Fox. A dog and a cock became great friends and agreed to travel together. At nightfall, the cock flew up into the branches of a tree to roost, while the dog curled himself up inside the trunk, which was hollow. At break of day, the cock woke up and grew as usual. A fox heard, and, wishing to make a breakfast of him, came and stood under the tree and begged him to come down. I should so like, said he, to make the acquaintance of one who has such a beautiful voice. The cock replied, Would you just wake up my porter who sleeps at the foot of the tree? He'll open the door and let you in. The fox accordingly rapped on the trunk, when out rushed the dog and tore him to pieces. Number 36. The Gnat and the Bull. A gnat alighted on one of the horns of a bull, and remained sitting there for a considerable time. When it had rested sufficiently and was about to fly away, it said to the bull, Do you mind if I go now? The bull merely raised his eyes and remarked without interest, It's all one to me. I didn't notice when you came, and I shan't know when you go away. 37. The Bear and the Travelers. Two travelers were on the road together when a bear suddenly appeared on the scene. Before he observed them, one made for a tree at the side of the road and climbed up into the branches and hid there. The other was not so nimble as his companion, and, as he could not escape, he threw himself on the ground and pretended to be dead. The bear came up and sniffed all around him, but he kept perfectly still and held his breath, for they say that a bear will not touch a dead body. The bear took him for a corpse and went away. When the coast was clear, the traveler in the tree came down and asked the other what it was the bear had whispered to him when he put his mouth to his ear. The other replied, He told me never again to travel with a friend who deserts you at the first sign of danger. Number 38. The Slave and the Lion. A slave ran away from his master, by whom he had been most cruelly treated, and in order to avoid capture, betook himself into the desert. As he wandered about in search of food and shelter, he came to a cave, which he entered and found to be unoccupied. Really, however, it was a lion's den, and almost immediately, to the horror of the wretched fugitive, the lion himself appeared. The man gave himself up for lost, but to his utter astonishment, the lion, instead of springing upon him and devouring him, came and fawned upon him, at the same time whining and lifting up his paw. Observing it to be much swollen and inflamed, he examined it, and found a large thorn embedded in the ball of the foot. He accordingly removed it, and dressed the wound as well as he could, and in course of time it healed up completely. The lion's gratitude was unbounded. He looked upon the man as his friend, and they shared the cave for some time together. A day came, however, when the slave began to long for the society of his fellow men, and he bade farewell to the lion and returned to the town. Here he was presently recognized and carried off in chains to his former master, who resolved to make an example of him, and ordered that he should be thrown into the beasts at the next public spectacle in the theater. On the fatal day the beasts were loosened into the arena, and among the rest a lion of huge bulk and a ferocious aspect, and then the wretched slave was cast in among them. What was the amazement of the spectators when the lion, after one glance, bounded up to him and lay down on his feet with every expression of affection and delight. It was his old friend of the cave. The audience clamored that the slave's life should be spared, and the governor of the town, marveling at such gratitude and fidelity in the beast, decreed that both should receive their liberty. And that is the end of the third section of Aesop's Fables. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.